Brother said that I stole his money from the wedding, and now the whole family hates me. Days later, I came to the family dinner, showed video proof, and shocked everyone. The wedding day was as beautiful as anyone could have hoped for. My brother Elijah was radiant in his designer suit, and Brianna, his now wife, looked like the happiest woman alive. Everything went smoothly, the vows, the champagne toasts, the dancing. If there was any tension, I didn't feel it. At least not until the night after the wedding. The family had gathered at my parents' house to relax and talk about the big day. We were in the middle of rehashing funny moments from the dance floor when Elijah stood up dramatically. His voice shook as he announced something that hit me like a truck. Jane stole our honeymoon money. $10,000. It's gone. The room fell silent. I could feel everyone's eyes turn to me. My brain couldn't process what he had just said. Stole? Me? It was absurd. Before I could even defend myself, Elijah went on and on. He talked about how devastated he was, how he'd been crying all day, and how betrayed he felt. Brianna sat frozen, looking like she'd been hit by a freight train. My parents, however, immediately sprang into action to support him. Jane, how could you do this? My mother said, shaking her head in disappointment. You ruined everything. Steal from your brother? Your own brother? Dad added. You're not welcome here anymore. I tried to speak up, to explain that I hadn't touched a dime. I pointed out that I had been at the front desk all night in full view of everyone and that I didn't even know where the money was kept. Brianna, to her credit, seemed unsure, even saying, I don't think Jane would do something like that. But Elijah wasn't having it. Stop defending her, Brianna, he snapped. She's lying. I can't believe you take her side over mine. Jane, you're disgusting. Get out of my sight. I was stunned. The anger in his voice wasn't just about the alleged theft, it was personal. My parents joined him in telling me that I was no longer part of the family. You are no longer our daughter, my father said, and that was the final blow. I exchanged glances with Brianna, who looked as confused as I felt, and then I left. As I drove away, I began to put things together. I knew exactly why he was doing this. It wasn't about the money, it was about our grandmother. Grandma had made it clear a few months earlier that she intended to leave me most of her inheritance. She believed I would use it wisely and take care of the family legacy. Elijah, the self-proclaimed golden child, was furious. He had tried to convince Grandma that he deserved the money instead, but it hadn't worked. Now that Grandma's health was failing, Elijah was desperate to make me look like the bad guy. It was his way of sabotaging me. I was angry, but I also knew this wasn't over. If he was going to play dirty, I could play dirtier. I had a secret of my own, one I'd kept to protect Brianna. Elijah had been cheating on her for months. I hadn't planned on exposing him. But after what he'd done, all bets were off. I began to plan my revenge. After that night, I couldn't stop thinking about what Elijah had done. The betrayal hurt, but what hurt even more was the fact that my parents believed him without a second thought. I couldn't even look at my phone because the family group chat exploded with texts about how I had let everyone down and how ashamed they were of me. It was as if Elijah had flipped a switch, and suddenly I was the family villain. But I wasn't going to let him win. Elijah thought he could destroy me and walk away unscathed. What he didn't know was that I had been sitting on a bombshell for months. Back in August, I'd accidentally caught him with someone who wasn't Brianna. I'd gone to a coffee shop in the next town to meet a friend. And there he was, sitting in a corner booth, holding hands with some woman I didn't recognize. They weren't exactly subtle, kissing, laughing, acting like a full-fledged couple. I didn't say anything at the time because, honestly, it wasn't any of my business. I figured it would come back to bite him eventually. I just never expected it to be me who'd have to bite back. Now, I needed proof. Something solid. Something undeniable. I knew his routine well enough. He'd always claimed he was visiting a friend or running errands when he disappeared for a few hours each week. It didn't take a genius to figure out what he was really doing. My best guess was Thursday, around 7 p.m., that seemed to be his usual window. So I parked my car down the street from his house and waited. Sure enough, just after 6:45, Elijah walked out, got into his car, and drove away. I followed him, keeping a good distance so he wouldn't notice. He went to the same coffee shop where I'd seen him before. The woman was waiting for him in the parking lot. I parked discreetly across the street and started recording. They hugged. Then they kissed. And not a quick peck, this was the kind of kiss that made it clear that Brianna wasn't even a thought in his head. They went inside and sat by the window, looking like a couple on a romantic date. The woman kept leaning in close, touching his arm, whispering in his ear. Elijah ate it up. I recorded the whole thing. 7 minutes of golden footage that would turn the whole situation on its head. When they finally left, I made sure to catch them hugging again before they got into separate cars and drove away. I waited until he was long gone before I drove home. My heart was pounding all the way home, but it wasn't nerves, it was anticipation. I knew I had something that would shatter his perfect little facade. But I wasn't going to rush into it. I had to wait for the right moment. Elijah had gone nuclear on me at a family gathering. So it was only fitting that I returned the favor. I decided to set up a dinner a few days later and pretend to apologize and make amends. My parents, still angry with me, reluctantly agreed. Elijah didn't hesitate to accept, probably thinking it would be his chance to humiliate me further. Little did he know what was coming. The days leading up to the dinner were excruciating. I stayed completely quiet even as Elijah continued to throw barbs in the family group chat about how some people can't take responsibility for their actions. My parents ate it up, of course. Every time I saw a text pop up from them saying something like, "We are so proud of you, Elijah, for handling this with grace," I wanted to scream. But I kept my cool. I knew it would be worth it. The morning of the dinner, I texted everyone in the family group chat, including Brianna. I said I wanted to meet for dinner and clear the air. "I owe everyone an explanation," I wrote, "and I need to apologize, especially to you, Brianna." My father replied first, saying they'd be there but that I'd better have a damn good reason for what I'd done. Elijah chimed in with a sarcastic remark about how he hoped I was ready to confess. Brianna's response was short and neutral, just a thumbs up emoji. Perfect. Everything was falling into place. I spent the day getting ready. I loaded the video onto my laptop and tested it to make sure the quality was good. I also printed out screenshots, just in case anyone tried to accuse me of faking the footage. When I arrived at my parents' house for dinner, I felt like I was going into a battle, and I was ready to win. The atmosphere was tense as I walked in. My father barely acknowledged me, and Elijah sat at the head of the table, looking smug as ever. Brianna was next to him, quiet and reserved, as she had been since the accusation. I didn't know if she believed I had stolen the money or not, but she was clearly keeping her thoughts to herself. We all sat down, and I began by taking a deep breath. First of all, I want to say that I'm sorry for how things turned out. I know you're all angry with me, and I understand why. But I've been thinking about everything that's happened, and I realize there's something I should have said sooner, something I've been holding back. Elijah leaned forward slightly, his eyes bright with anticipation. He probably thought I was going to confess. My dad just stared, waiting. Brianna looked uncomfortable. I pulled up my laptop, put it on the table, and opened the video file. "What you're about to see is not easy to watch," I said. "But I think it's important for everyone here to know the truth." Elijah's smug expression faltered for the first time as I pressed play. The room fell silent as the video began. It showed him walking up to the woman in the coffee shop parking lot, hugging her, kissing her. The date in the coffee shop. The way they couldn't keep their hands off each other. And then the last shot, them hugging again in the parking lot before they drove away. The video ended, and for a few seconds, no one said a word. Then Brianna spoke. "Who the hell is that?" she asked, her voice sharp. Elijah's face flushed. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. "Answer her," I said. "You accused me of stealing, of tearing this family apart, when all along you were the one who was lying. This isn't your friend, is it? How long has this been going on?" Elijah stammered, but Brianna didn't wait for him to answer. She pushed back her chair and stood up, her face a mixture of anger and disbelief. "You've been cheating on me," she said. "The whole time I was working my ass off to give you the life you wanted. The Maldives? The car? All of it? For this?" My father looked like he'd been hit by a truck. He turned to Elijah, his voice shaking. "Elijah, is this true?" Elijah finally managed to speak. "It's not what it looks like," he said, but no one believed him. "This will be a lesson to you, Elijah," I said, standing up. "You started this war. All I did was finish it." Brianne grabbed her keys and left without another word. My parents, still in shock, turned on me. "How could you do this to him?" my mother said. "Me?" I shot back. "He accused me of stealing $10 to make me look bad, and I'm the bad guy for showing the truth? You should ask him how far he's willing to go to cover up his lies." I didn't wait for an answer. I grabbed my stuff and left. I wasn't sticking around to hear any more excuses. They wanted a villain, and now they had one. But this time it wasn't me. After the dinner, I didn't hear from anyone in my family for days. No texts, no phone calls, no attempts to explain or apologize. It was radio silence. I figured they were probably trying to clean up the mess Elijah had made. The first person to reach out wasn't even the family, it was Brianna. She called me 2 days after the dinner, and frankly, I was surprised she wanted to talk. I thought she might be mad at me for blindsiding her like that, but she didn't sound mad at all. "I just wanted to say thank you," she said, "for being honest. I wish it hadn't come to this, but I'm glad I know. We talked for a while, and she told me she'd already started making arrangements to move out of the house she shared with Elijah. She also mentioned that she'd canceled their trip to the Maldives and stopped making payments on the car she'd promised to buy him. He can figure out his own life now, she said. I asked her if Elijah had tried to talk to her since the dinner. He's been blowing up my phone, begging me to understand, she said. But there's nothing to understand. He cheated. End of story. Hearing her say that gave me a strange sense of closure. At least someone in this whole mess was seeing things clearly. A few days later, my dad finally contacted me. He sent me a long, guilty text message about how disappointed he was in me for ruining Elijah's relationship and how family should always support each other, no matter what. I stared at the message for a while, trying to decide if it was even worth responding to. In the end, I sent back a short reply. Family supports each other by telling the truth, not by covering up lies. Maybe you should think about that. That didn't go over well. My mom followed up with a message telling me I was being immature and that Elijah was still their little boy no matter what he'd done. It was ridiculous. They were willing to overlook his cheating and manipulation just because he was their favorite. Meanwhile, Elijah remained silent. Not a word from him. I didn't know if he was too ashamed to speak or if he was planning his next move, but either way, I didn't care. He'd lost his fiancée, his free trip to the Maldives, and probably most of the sympathy he'd soaked up from my parents. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over. Elijah wasn't the type to admit defeat. If he was quiet, it was because he was plotting. And I wasn't wrong. A week later, he made his move. I woke up one morning to a barrage of texts from mutual friends and extended family. Apparently, Elijah had begun to spread a new story, that I had set him up to ruin his wedding and sabotage his relationship. He claimed that I had been following him for weeks, trying to catch him slipping, and that the video was just a desperate attempt to get back at him for exposing the alleged theft. It was absurd, but the damage was done. Some people bought his story, especially those who didn't know the whole story. They started texting me, calling me petty and vindictive. Others, thankfully, saw through his lies and told me they believed me. But I wasn't going to sit back and let them control the narrative. I had all the evidence, the video, the screenshots, the texts. If he wanted a public fight, I was ready. But before I could make a move, something unexpected happened. Brianna stepped in. She posted a long message on social media that addressed everything. She explained the cheating, the accusations, the dinner, and even my role in exposing the truth. Jane didn't ruin our relationship, she wrote. Elijah did that all by himself. She just showed me what I needed to see. If anyone has a problem with her, take it up with me. The post went viral among our circle of friends and family. It shut down most of Elijah's supporters overnight. People started reaching out to me, apologizing for jumping to conclusions. Even my parents went quiet for a while, probably realizing how bad they'd looked by taking his side so blindly. But Elijah? He doubled down. His next move would take things to a whole new level. Elijah's next move was as bold as it was stupid. He tried to sue me for slander. Yes, you read that right. He actually hired a lawyer and filed a lawsuit claiming that I had intentionally destroyed his reputation and caused him emotional distress. When I was served with the papers, I couldn't decide whether to laugh or get angry. He wasn't just desperate, he was delusional. I didn't waste any time. I hired my own lawyer, showed them the video, the texts, and Brianna's social media posts, and they immediately said I had nothing to worry about. This is a scare tactic, they told me, but if he wants to go to court, we'll go to court. And so we did. The court date was about a month later. Most of the family showed up, probably out of morbid curiosity. Brianna was there, too, sitting quietly in the back. Elijah arrived with his lawyer, looking smug and confident, as if he'd already won. The judge wasn't impressed. His lawyer argued that I had maliciously recorded and distributed private footage of Elijah, causing him to lose his relationship and social standing. But my lawyer immediately shut that down. They pointed out that the footage was taken in a public place and showed behavior that directly contradicted Elijah's previous accusations against me. They also pointed out that I'd only shown the video to our immediate family until Elijah's lies forced the situation into the public eye. Then came the best part. Brianna took the stand. She testified that Elijah had accused me of stealing without evidence and tried to alienate me from the family. She confirmed that the video was the only reason she'd learned the truth about his cheating. Jane didn't ruin anything, she said. She saved me from wasting my life on someone who didn't respect me or our relationship. Elijah's lawyer tried to cross-examine her, but Brianna didn't flinch. She stuck to the facts and left no room for interpretation. When it was Elijah's turn to testify, his story completely fell apart. He contradicted himself several times, claiming at one point that the woman in the video was just a friend and at another point that he and Brianna were on a break. When it happened, the judge wasn't buying any of it. By the end of the hearing, it was clear where things were headed. The judge dismissed the case, ruling that I hadn't defamed Elijah and that the evidence I had presented was both truthful and relevant. But the real kicker came when the judge scolded Elijah directly. "You have wasted this court's time with baseless accusations," she said. "It is clear that this lawsuit was an attempt to deflect blame for your own actions. I urge you to reflect on the decisions that led you here today." Elijah left the courtroom in tears. After that, the tables were turned. No one, not my parents, not our extended family, not even his closest friends would have anything to do with his lies. Brianna cut off all contact and completed the process of moving out. My parents, humiliated and ashamed, finally admitted they'd been wrong to take his side. It wasn't a dramatic apology, just a quiet acknowledgement when my father called me one night and said, "We made a mistake. I hope one day you can forgive us." I told him I'd think about it, and I meant it. Forgiveness wasn't going to be easy after everything they put me through. As for Elijah, he completely disappeared from the family scene. He moved out of state a few weeks later, claiming he needed a fresh start. From what I've heard, he struggled to keep friends or a job ever since. His reputation followed him, as it should have. I won't pretend that this whole ordeal hasn't left scars, it has. But in the end, the truth prevailed, and I was finally free of the cloud Elijah had tried to hang over me. I don't regret exposing him. He started the war, and he paid the price.